I had in mind to start with lines and veils, questions about lines and veils, because they are what brought me to talk to you in the first moment. But after watching the video that you linked to me, which was very interesting, I changed my mind. I will start with another question. In that video, you say this: we have to recognize that fiction and system are not an enclosed unit. They are part of a bigger thing, a group of people with social needs and social priorities. We are human beings, so any activity, not only RPGs, is inside these social dynamics, which is very true. I found it very true. And afterwards, my first thought was, what's so special about RPGs that we feel the need to specify this thing and to even debate about this thing and to develop specific techniques for this? Because for everything else, I will say it's quite obvious, no? We don't expect people to put aside their social dynamics and relationships when they are doing sports or attending to other hobbies, or they are shopping or going for a walk. No, we assume that people well-being and relationships will take priority on the activity whenever necessary. I mean, unless we are going to war or something like that. No, we usually assume that, for example, I am.
Let's stay with playing things together for fun. Let's stay with that at least, so we don't have to extend it out to absolutely everything.
Exactly.
I think that's fair. But I do see your point. I think, and I also want to just quickly point out, it's not a matter of choosing between the social priorities and the activity. I actually think that the activity only makes sense in that context, right? So we don't have to choose. It's not like those are two different things. So, and I think you get that. So with
yes.
Excellent. And so to address your question, if I can start, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the answer to that is quite clear, I think, to me, which is when we look at this activity, we can't properly call it by any familiar term. We can't call it by a familiar term like game, for example. I'm not saying the term is excluded, but I am saying that that's not where we start to understand what we're doing. The way I am talking about it now is to emphasize its qualities as a medium. So if we look at any other social creative activity or social play activity, we find that there is a medium in which we do it. We will have, a big, I'm thinking about when I was a kid and they would, in a community center or something, they would roll out those big newspaper rolls of paper, right? Those great big rolls of newsprint, just blank, and just roll it out on the table. And then all the kids would be along the sides of the table with their, with their colors to draw on the part in front of them. So the point is that there is a medium for the activity, and you can talk about this for anything else. So this is a medium that I think is extremely distinctive. I don't think it has an analogy to the others. I think it is its own thing. And I think that one of the difficulties is in mistaking the medium for whatever it is we were told it would do or what it is for. You are told this is, fill in the blank. It's like this, or it is kind of like that. And you now are discovering that the medium is capable of things that you didn't realize, or that, and you are disoriented. So people are flailing around looking for ways to manage in this medium, but I think that has not really been very coherent. I don't think people have made very much sense trying to do that. And I have first published on this topic 20 years ago. So I've been thinking a lot about it since then, of course, too. So what do I mean by the medium and what are its special properties? I think that's very relevant to your question. You said, what makes it different?
Yeah.
Well, first, if we look at it from the point of view, okay, first of all, it is a fiction creating medium. And I mean that in a very, very basic sense. Nothing literary or important about the word fiction, right? Fiction in the most basic sense of the word. So it creates some of that. I don't care how good, I don't care how long, I don't, whatever. It creates some. So if we look at a fictional object, let us say our fiction includes this pen,
Okay.
there were procedures and people speaking, right? Different people are speaking. And if we follow this pen through the events of play, different people have said different things at different times, correct? This person says the pen is in my pocket, or this pen is on a table. Another person says, for some entity in play, I take the pen. And then another person says, for whatever reason, the pen breaks. So you see how the pen has traveled from person to person, or more accurately, and this is very important, the different people have different responsibilities regarding the pen. There are some things that only one person can say about it. There are other things that only another person can say about it. So I, for example, might identify the conditions under which it might break, and I announce, okay, this thing might break. But another person talks about whether a character can pick up the pen and carry it around, and I can't say anything about that. I can't object to it. Do you see what I mean? We talk about the object being reincorporated from speaker to speaker to speaker. We talk about
Okay.
the people having different, the word I use is authorities, not over each other, but toward the object, any given object. And that applies to events and information and anything else in the fiction, not just objects. So when you have this going on, that means that the only way that play can proceed, the only way, is if you listen to what other people said. That is the act of listening to what they say. And so there are many things to talk about. For example, I don't think that we are not talking. People say theater of the mind and imagination. We are doing nothing of the kind. There is no theater of the mind. There is no imagination as the medium. We are using our imaginations, but we are not creating a single movie that we're all supposed to be imagining the very same way. Instead, the overlap among us is not the similarity of the imagination. It is what has been heard and utilized. And insofar as all of us speaking, if you travel through play and you see all the things that have overlapped through listening, that's the medium of play. So this is actually a very big deal. That's what makes this a very different medium, because in other media that involve fiction, the fiction was made, correct? And completed or
Yeah.
mostly completed. And then the fiction travels over to people who now experience it as audience. And there are some versions of this, like, for example, audience participation, where people shout out, right? And you put things in. But really, the performance from the creators to the audience, that is never a gray area. We know who are the creators and we know who is the audience. And in the case of most fictional media, that creative process is so isolated and so effectively private that the audience neither has access to it, nor do they want it. There's no reason. Maybe afterward, as a subculture, we're interested in what the film director said to the cinematographer. But in terms of actually watching the thing and experiencing it, that is irrelevant. And for most people, except for geeks on the internet and who get paid to write reviews, for most people, it's extremely irrelevant. So we don't know how long it took William Shakespeare to decide about the events in one of his plays. We don't know what his creative process was. And so the point here is that what we do in this medium is extremely different. Instead of creating a finished product that will go on and become the artistic experience, we are in the position actually of enjoying that attenuated creative process. So we get to, just like William Shakespeare, when he finally decided what to write in that act right there, what happens, whatever enjoyment he got from feeling that right at that moment, that's what we do. Not privately, not quickly. So we do end up with fiction, but you see, we are in a completely different state regarding our relationship to it than we are used to from other media. We are accustomed to those creator and audience states in other media to the point where for many people, it's inconceivable that fiction could be any other way. So this is why, due to the necessity of listening and due to the relationship that we have toward the fiction itself and its making, this is why we are in a fairly unique position as far as content and its appropriateness is concerned. We are in a very interesting position relative to what sort of content do we want is going to be here. And the reason people have trouble with this is because nobody has done it before. And the expectations that are brought and the techniques that people have proposed and all sorts of things, I find most of them to be uninformed, manipulative, and ineffective. And that's one of the reasons why, as you probably saw in that interview that you looked at, that I do not use the term safety tools. So does that answer your first question as to why I think this is a different, why people have trouble recognizing that they need to address these things? Especially, I should continue, especially if you buy it as a product. You buy a book, which is instructions. You buy a box. You buy a kit. And someone says, this thing, and I will be crude for a moment, this thing will give you the best hand job ever. It's awesome. And they're lying. It's not a thing that will give you an experience at all. It's like somebody handing you a musical instrument and saying, there you go, you're going to play great music now. Are you? You don't even really know that it's a musical instrument, let alone actually how to, go through any pedagogy for how to actually learn to get good at this particular kind. If you are in that position, then the capacity to address it even as a human activity, let alone refine its content into something that you find very fulfilling with others, is pretty poor. So those are my thoughts on your first question.
So let me try to recap just to see if I understood correctly. you're saying that what is so special about RPGs, so they lead to these particular problems, is on one hand that they are a new activity, that they are activity that most people don't really understand yet, or do not have a deep understanding of it. So they're untrained to manage the possible issues. And on the other hand, that this activity is creating a fiction, and so we are both creating the fiction and being, let's say, watching, and receiving the fiction at the same time. And so we don't know exactly what to do if the content of that fiction is hurting us, because we are the authors together with other people. So we need to distinguish, let's say, our need to be safe with our different roles and authorities in building it.
I have two things to say
Please.
in your summary. Let's take the first part of the summary. It is accurate in many ways what you said about the medium being a new medium and people not being accustomed to it. But I suggest that you have it reversed, that the people who consider themselves trained in it, the people who consider themselves experienced with it, are actually the worst people possible. They are the worst people possible to address what could or should or how we could deal with it as a medium. That the hobby has not treated this activity well. Hobby culture has actually damaged it and limited its capacity for development. So I'm not sentimental about the hobby or experienced players or people who know what they're doing or whatever. I consider a great deal of that to be abandoned as quickly as possible. So
that's a very strong position. Which is fine.
I've heard that before. So then the point being, though, therefore, that I consider most people, globally speaking, actually pick up on the properties of this activity very quickly, very easily, as long as the procedures are, reasonably well taught to them, right? I mean, if they learn how we do it, and if those procedures are not lies, which is a primary issue. So you're told that this is how we play, but then you discover, no, that's not really how we play. So if that's not the case, and if that process of listening has its most important feature that I didn't mention before, because I didn't want to throw in more terms. The word I use for when you have placed something into the fiction or done something to the pen that it was, your privilege to do to this pen, that then other people contribute in light of that event. They have heard you. And their reincorporations include, it's reincorporating what you said as well as what everyone else has said so far. In other words, they listened to you, and now the pen is in a new status that is only there because of what you said.
Agency.
Yes. That is the agency. That is what people experience who are not familiar with role-playing, and once they experience it, they get it. They get it, they're on it, they can do this, they have no problem with it. And most of the social concerns that may be raised, those people, not having been habituated to the limitations of the hobby, don't have very many problems with it.
Even in managing sensitive content.
Well, that's something that is developed, I think. I think that their capacity to develop that is going to be a much shorter and easier road.